What's the problem? The problem is, let's take this noble motto, an enemy is someone whose story you have not heard, and do something very vulgar, in the sense of British empiricism. Let's just replace the general name with a concrete example. Would you also say Hitler was our enemy because we did not really try to hear his story? And the problem is deeper here than it may appear. Namely, the automatic presupposition which we should abandon is that the story we are telling ourselves about ourselves, our inner, authentic self-experience, is the point of truth. As if you humanize the other, if you get him at his or her or their innermost, then you can say this is what they truly are. But I think that this precisely, if there is a lesson of psychoanalysis, is that this precisely is what we should radically abandon. If from what we know about Hitler, if we take, again, the worst example, one of the worst, Hitler, I think that even for him probably, the same as Hannah Arendt claimed for Eichmann would have hold. Probably he was, as we know from the memories of his secretary who died only 2 years ago or when, he could have been quite kind, compassionate, he liked to serve cakes to small children and so on, gentle vegetarian and so on. And I'm even quite sure that he was absolutely sincere in this. This is the important lesson of Hannah Arendt, that people who cause great evil, we should not elevate them into sublime Byronesque, demoniac figures of evil. The gap between their intimate experience and the horror of their acts is always immense. So again, the experience we have of our lives from within, the story we tell ourselves about ourselves in order to account for what we are doing, is fundamentally a lie. That's not the point of truth. So let me give you two extreme examples which I already developed in some of my earlier books. One Western, one Eastern. The West, Père Joseph. You maybe know who he was, the grey eminence of Cardinal Richelieu. And you should maybe read the book Aldous Huxley, The Grey Eminence, about Père Joseph. What fascinated Aldous Huxley so much about Père Joseph? It's that he was, well, the most brutal real politician that you can imagine, organizing kidnappings, torture, dark plotting. He's basically the guy, if we simplify history, who is responsible for Hitler. You know, in one sense, in the 30 Years' War, 1618-1648 in Europe, he was the one who made a pact between Catholic France and Protestant Sweden against, Catholic Austria, in order to weaken Germany, to prevent the reunification of Germany. He succeeded. The result was the German deferral of reunification, which was the structural condition for Hitler. Okay, the worst guy you can imagine. But there is something quite fascinating. After he did this dirty work every evening, metaphorically, almost every evening, he was in permanent conversation, exchange of letters with some French convent with nuns, and the exchange of letters demonstrates that he was practicing mystic, this same Père Joseph, and you cannot escape the conclusion. His mystical meditations are, how should I put it simply, top of the top, absolutely at the level of Saint Teresa, of whatever you want. And this is what fascinated Huxley. How is it possible that the same person who was ruthless, lying, poisoning, brutality itself, at the same time demonstrates a breathtakingly deep spiritual strength? Huxley's solution was a very simple one, was that there must be something in Western Christianity which enables this, opens up the possibility of this deviation. He thinks it's too much fixation on pain, fascination with the figure of Christ on the cross. So Huxley's solution, let's turn to Eastern spirituality. But there, I think, the story is the same. I read a book which I often quote, Brian Victoria, he himself is a Zen Buddhist, Zen at War, where you learn again. This is a book about how the Japanese Zen community related towards the Japanese war effort in the 30s and 40s. And you learn in this book that with really a couple, like 5, 6 minor exceptions, millions of them not only totally supported Japanese war effort, but even provided the justification of it. Let me mention a figure which I'm sure is well known to many of you, Daisetsu Suzuki, popular in the 60s here in the States and in all Europe as the great popularizer of Zen Buddhism. Maybe we should also read his text from the 30s and 40s, where, for example, in justifying Japanese invasion of China, he said that the Chinese should learn that from the cosmic perspective, the sword which is killing them now is really a sword of love. Then he advises the attitude of a true warrior, that you should, as it were, overcome your ego and objectivize yourself, which makes killing much easier. He says, like, when you kill a man, you shouldn't think I'm pulling the trigger to hit him. You should say, I'm observing how my hand triggers a gun, and when the bullet flows through the air, the enemy body stumbles upon it, so that instead of a substantial confrontation of me hurting another human being, you get some kind of an abstract ballet. So even more, Suzuki and others, if you want detailed proofs, read the book, demonstrate how, he demonstrates how, yes, so Suzuki even went a step further and claimed a very direct claim that for the majority of ordinary people who don't have time for big meditations and so on, to spend days on them or years, absolute obedience to military discipline is the only practical way to achieve Satori, the Zen Buddhist enlightenment. The idea is when the commander shouts, shoot, and you shoot without thinking, you have overcome your false ego, and so on, and so on, and so on. So again, my point is not, look, Suzuki was a dirty militarist in reality. No, this would have been easy. My point is, you got my point, to accept this gap, that at the same time, he could have justified terrible crimes, and at the same time, he was absolutely authentic purveyor of spiritual experiences.